In part 1 of this video, I asked, is there anything in the Bible that can prove it is written or inspired by an all-powerful and all-knowing God? Anything in there that only a God could have known? I went on firmly to establish how there is nothing, but rather a shocking deficit. I also challenged anyone to find something. Well, I was taken up on that challenge. I have proof the Bible was written by God, a believer emphatically informs me. Here in the book of Job, only God could have known this. Can you bind the cluster of Pleiades or loose the bands of Orion? He continued to inform me that we now know how the cluster of stars in Pleiades are gravitationally bounded and move in unison. Can you bind the cluster of Pleiades? And we also now know how the 3 stars making up Orion's belt are not gravitationally bounded and are moving apart, hence, or loose the bands of Orion. He assures me that only God could have known this. My friends, are you impressed? Well, you shouldn't be. Every one of us can look up at the stars and conclude what this author had without knowing anything about physics or astronomy. Pleiades is the only cluster of stars that one can see with the naked eye. Referring to Pleiades as a cluster or binded is not at all fantastic. Furthermore, Orion was a very popular character in astrology at that time in history. Noting how his belt appears to be loose is not a divine revelation. It visually appears loosened or about to fall off. It is barely hanging on the hip. The writer of this Bible text is simply referring to what he can see plain as day. There is no divine inspiration required here at all. In fact, if we really want to understand just how inaccurate Bronze Age man was about understanding cosmology, we need look no further than the Bible. There are several verses that would indicate the earth has a solid structure, some kind of a dome where the stars are fixed in place. In Job, we read, "Can you join him in spreading out the skies, hard as a mirror of cast bronze?" The book of Ezekiel also provides a glimpse of this solid structure. In an expanse, shining like awe-inspiring crystal, spread out above their heads. And once in, I saw what appeared to be a throne above the crystal surface. In each case, these verses reference a solid canopy or dome structure in which God resides over. The order of how God created the earth also makes no sense from our current understanding of cosmology. The earth was created on the first day, and a firmament, this solid and fixed structure, on the second day. Then, on the 4th day, we get the sun, moon, and stars, which were placed in and not above this firmament. And let them be lights in the vault of the sky to give light on the earth. God also walks around on this solid structure. Thick clouds veil him, so that he does not see, and he walks on the vault of heaven. This vault, or canopy-like structure, is crucial for how the Bible describes our planet as being non-moving. There are so many of these verses, I will reference most of them in the ticker below. I set firm its pillars. In 1 Samuel we read, "For the pillars of earth are the Lord's, and he had set the world upon them." The world is firmly established. It cannot be moved. I realize how it doesn't feel like the earth is moving, but it most certainly is and can be moved. Not only does the Bible continuously lend support to the idea that the earth is fixed in place with pillars or foundations and with a solid canopy above, but it also champions a flat earth model. It is He who sits above the circle of the earth. Folks, circles are flat. The earth is a globe. The Bible is referring to the earth as a circle in which God looks down on from up above and can see us like little grasshoppers. If the Bible had even the slightest clue that the earth was spinning and traveling in a galactic orbit, it would have chosen very different expressions and words, such as movement, momentum, sphere, ball, or globe. The Bible also offers other clues to confirm its notion of a flat earth. Matthew 4:8 says, "The devil took him to a very high mountain and showed him all the kingdoms of the world." In Revelation we read, "Behold, he is coming with the clouds. Every eye shall see him." The tree grew large and strong, and its top touched the sky. It was visible to the ends of the earth. A tree that is visible from every point on the earth? Furthermore, there is no end to a globe. Such observations are simply impossible on a spherical earth. Okay, maybe believers can pull up a Christian apologetics webpage and painfully explain away some of these issues. But by doing so, they are missing a bigger picture. Out of all of the passages in the Bible referring to cosmology, instead of having one clear and precise verse that is correct and explains the universe as we know it, apologists are instead having to frantically explain away dozens that would imply an incorrect understanding. An overwhelming abundance of special pleading is necessary to harmonize these verses with a globe model. And of course, the flat earthers have a heyday with the Bible and take full advantage of what it so clearly implies. If you're not aware, flat earthers have a fond love for the Bible, as it is a treasure trove for their ideology of the universe. In fact, flat earthers and Christianity are oftentimes synonymous with each other. There is no mystery as to why. And these problems only continue to worsen. Revelation suggests that stars are like little dots of light that can fall down to the earth. And the stars of heaven fell unto the earth, even as a fig tree casteth her untimely figs. One verse later, the people are hiding in rocks from these falling stars. If these texts are God-written or inspired, shouldn't God know what a star is? In the book of Daniel, we find a similar concept of the cosmos. And it cast down some of the host and of the stars to the ground, and stamped upon them. Again, in the New Testament, we read, "And the stars shall fall from heaven." This verse then continues as though people will still inhabit the earth after the stars have fallen on it. We now know that if only one star fell to the earth, no one would be hollering or hiding behind rocks. There are numerous verses that indicate this firmament, or solid canopy, has openings or windows which God can open up, lending further support that not only is there some kind of solid structure over the earth, in which the stars are fixed, but just above it you will find God in heaven. And the windows of heaven were opened. This idea that God lives just up above the clouds, on top of this solid structure with windows, is probably best supported by a story in the book of Genesis, known as the Tower of Babel, whereas God is very troubled and concerned that if people continue to construct this tower, they will eventually reach up to him, and the book of Isaiah confirms this notion. I will ascend above the tops of the clouds, and I will make myself like the Most High. The Bible reveals clearly how prophets and holy men can and do actually reach God by means of flying up into the clouds. We all remember this story, don't we? And Elijah went up to heaven in a whirlwind. And of course, how can you forget that grand moment when Jesus floated up? He was lifted up while they were looking on, and a cloud received him. And of course, even Islamic writers understood how this model works, as Muhammad also flew up to heaven on a winged horse. Not only is heaven up above, but hell is down below. Concerning Jesus' resurrection, the New Testament says this: "Now that he ascended, what is it but that he also descended first into the lower parts of the earth?" The Bible is very clear about this. If you want to get to heaven, you will need to fly up beyond the clouds. And in the book of Revelation, a large number of folks actually did. Then they heard a loud voice from heaven saying to them, "Come up here." And they went up to heaven in a cloud. And of course, who can forget about the most famous Christian prophecy of all, the rapture? We who are still alive and are left will be caught up together with them in the clouds to meet the Lord in the air. A grand celebration, folks. Yes, with everyone floating up into the clouds. And of course, a great golden city with streets of gold will someday descend from out of the clouds and rest on Jerusalem, as if there really is a golden city up there somewhere. Perhaps you have wondered why the Bible depicts angels as having wings. Why would they need wings? Well, you have to have wings to reach heaven or travel back and forth. In the book of Psalms, God had actually mounted a cherub angel and flew. And he rode upon a cherub and did fly. In the Lord's temple, there were statues of these cherubim. 5 cubits was the one wing of the cherub. In the book of Revelation, we read about winged angelic beings, each one of them having 6 wings. And also in Isaiah, seraphim stood above him, each having 6 wings. Then one of the seraphim flew to me with a burning coal in his hand. Wings, my friends, for navigating through the air. I find it rather odd how God was so concerned about people building a tower so tall that it would reach heaven, but now seems to have changed his mind, now that we have rocket ships. God seems to no longer see this as a problem. Perhaps God packed his bags and changed residency? Is this not suspicious of being fairy tale? When we read about Jesus floating up into the clouds, we must ask ourselves, where was he really going? Orbit? The moon? To the edge of the Milky Way? Any reasonable person should be able to admit how the Bible is demonstrably wrong concerning its understanding of reality, and sometimes it's even ludicrous beyond gross misrepresentations. In the book of Joshua, we read about the sun standing still. And the sun stood still, and the moon stayed, until the people had avenged themselves upon their enemies. So the sun stood still in the midst of heaven, and hasted not to go down about a whole day. Essentially, the sun froze in the sky for roughly 16 hours. Can you imagine all of the forces that would have to come into play to keep us from not dying if the universe suddenly stopped? This is God's way of helping Joshua kill the natives? Think about it. God could have easily spread a toxic gas that would peacefully put the enemy to a sleepy death in a much more humane kind of way. But of course, God would rather suspend the entire solar system so Joshua could finish them off with iron swords. Seems legit. Certainly, we would expect that every other nation around the world might have been affected by this cosmic event, and that widespread records of such an unusual suspension of the solar system should exist. Well, it seems not so surprising to me that we find no existing corroborating evidence anywhere else in the world. My friends, the Bible is not only a violent, barbaric book, but also wrong about a great many of the realities we now know to be true. I cannot recall who wrote or where I found this, but I came across a quote I just have to share. And please forgive me, as I have no idea how to pronounce some of these names correctly, nor have the time to practice them. If God inspired a book, should it not be the greatest piece of literature known to man? It should beat Shakespeare on enduring relevance, Stephen Hawking on scientific accuracy, Pablo Neruda on poetry, Alexander Solzhenitsyn on ethical coherence, and Maya Angelou on sheer lucid beauty. I agree with this sentiment, and also take note on how the Bible does in fact fail to match that of such brilliant minds. Stay strong and wise, my friends.
You're just being programmed to believe in miracles when love is all you really need. I don't believe in masquerades. I don't believe that you're okay. I don't believe that God will save. Only you can solve your problems. I don't care what they sold